Providing adequate yet affordable housing for students is currently a major issue in Germany. My colleague Ramona here has worked with the administration to identify possible solutions of how it can be done, and we would like to share this experience with you in a short interview. So, Ramona, what was the project about?
Last year, we did a consultation on student housing for the land North Rhine-Westphalia. 12 student unions had applied for state subsidies to invest around 900 million in total for the next 10 years into their student housing.
So, do I get this right? The student unions own and manage the apartments and rent them out to their clientele. So, would it be unusual for them to apply for state funding?
Well, state grants for subsidized housing is a standard procedure. And of course, in this case, for a special target group like student as well. However, the volume of the investment connected to the application was extraordinary. There is a big investment backlog which the student unions have to manage over the coming years. That led the ministry's engagement in this particular case.
So your client was not a single public entity, but a group of different authorities?
Right.
Which ministries got involved and why?
Right. We worked with 12 student unions from 12 different cities. In addition, 2 different ministries of the land were involved. One administers the subsidies and the other one has the legal control over the student unions. Furthermore, the Ministry of Finance at the national level, abbreviation BMF, financed our consultation.
And what exactly did PD's task entail?
Well, first of all, to analyze the organizational setup of the student unions to develop and manage the housing stock. To identify obstacles to call for funding, and further to recommend actions to cope with the different investment tasks. And finally, to identify synergies and quick wins.
So I understand that that was an extraordinary situation for you and your team too. What's usually at the core of your consulting work?
Well, the special thing was that we have advised the federal ministry for the first time. That made me nervous, as previously the PD team has been working at municipal level. The provision of housing, and in particular affordable housing in cities, is a very important topic in Germany at the moment. We noted a very high demand for advice in this area for the past years, which is why we put together a special team for housing. Apart from that, the pressure was on for the team because the BMSF has identified the project as a pilot. For this reason, I was very keen to let this project go well. Also, the frameworks of conditions in terms of time frame and delivery of results within 1 year were very challenging. But I knew it was going to be a very good project. It was a great initiative of the land to get all stakeholders for student housing on one table. So I accepted the challenge.
So you undertook the study during the pandemic, so I assume it was a virtual table you gathered around. Tell me about the setup. Were all the parties involved throughout the process?
Yeah, we undertook the study completely digitally. In our workshops, kick-off meeting, board meetings, we gathered around 20 people, and the student unions and ministries attended at all times.
So how did you then kick off the process? What was your strategy and what did you expect to happen?
Well, we defined the usual content dimensions and started with interviews and looking into documents. And I thought that the 12 student unions were most similar to each other with comparable issues and the joint objective to provide housing for students. I expected the well-known professional discussion around socially acceptable rents and on the one side and exploding construction costs on the other. That makes affordable housing very challenging.
And were your expectations met?
Chiara, unfortunately not. I discovered the student unions were all coming from different places. They faced individual situations, like the market conditions they have to cope with, the condition of their housing stock, the administrational system they use, as well as the questions they confronted us with. The study were all very diverse.
Could you maybe give some examples of these differences?
Sure. For example, the number of students they take care of, ranging from about 950 up to 5,200. The investment need, ranging from 700,000 euros to 130 million. And the different tasks around student housing they have to deal with, ranging from only improved maintenance to renovation and finally to new build. And different tasks need different solutions.
So that is indeed a very broad spectrum to cover. So I guess it must have been quite difficult to give any general advice?
Yeah, because all topics that the student unions raised were extremely relevant and had their justification. But they were very broad and specific at the same time. It felt almost like an explosion of output. Of course, we wanted an open exchange of ideas, but due to the diversity of the issues, not everything was relevant to everybody. Each individual student union was very dedicated about their work, but my job was to make concrete recommendations for action, which would apply all student unions if possible, in order to secure the supply of housing for students in general.
So how did you feel in that situation?
It was like a balancing act. On the one hand, the complexity of the construction tasks, and on the other hand, the framework conditions of the consulting project itself. The process risked to get out of hand.
So you were in real trouble. When did you realize something went wrong?
Unfortunately, after 6 months, so halfway into the project. I had a wealth of information and thought I would never get that report together in time.
And how did you manage to turn things around?
Well, one day I came home and flipped open my ironing board. That's what I usually do when I want to sort out my thoughts. And I thought, if I want this project to be successful, I need to change something. I need a plan on how to manage the upcoming content dimensions and continue to maintain the personal engagement and the individual perspective of those involved.
So can we say this was sort of a turning point in the process? What was on your mind in this moment?
Well, after 25 years of professional experience in the housing industry taught me one thing: not to standardize the different tasks, and that the challenges reducing investment backlogs in housing cannot be tackled by one entity alone. So finally, we had to manage the different interests. As from my point of view, only by addressing the task from different angles in an interdisciplinary way, we get the full picture.
So in what way did you actually change your strategy?
Well, the next day at my desk, I remodeled the structure of the content dimensions, and I stayed focused on this clear system. I used the system like a drawer, in which I could file away the emerging individual topics on the one hand, and on the other hand, the drawer could be opened, and if necessary, we dealt with issues inside. We finally used more statistical evaluations and analysis. We had a clear and transparent base everybody could work with. Based on this data, we were able to classify and objectify the individual concerns in terms of their importance of the whole study.
So how did this refocusing work out?
In my eyes, we created an awareness for the different perspectives. In doing so, we were able to make the complexity of challenges transparent, the construction-related and the real estate-related challenges for student housing. As a result, we were able to make recommendations for optimizing the organizational processes in the student unions according to investment backlog. And finally, I finished my report.
So I'm happy to hear you were able to draw conclusions from the process, and thank you for giving us this insight. Now, last question. Looking back, if you were to do it again, maybe in a different city, what were your key findings? What did you learn from the project?
What I've learned from this is that housing provision is an interdisciplinary task, unchanged. And cooperation between the different departments is very important. The challenges, reducing investment backlog and building new houses for students, cannot be tackled by one entity alone. It's a cross-sectional task, and only by working together, the picture becomes complete.